I think you make more money at every stage if people believe in your business practices. And I remember when we were buying a lot in the early 2000s, and the values were going up quickly in Alberta from '03 to 14. And I remember we were coming in second a lot, and the brokerage community would pick us to buy a building. And they'd pick us because we had this value system that said we're going to close. And sometimes we found things that were misrepresented. We said, it's okay. We'll look through that, or we'll split the middle with the seller and we'll close anyway. And you get a reputation to be a good buyer. And even if you're not the highest bidder, if you're a good buyer, you might be second or third. And in the end, you always make more money in the long run by doing the right thing. And I would hope that our reputation says that we've done the right thing throughout our 25 years together. And I just have to mention, my two partners, Greg Guado and Rob Blackwell, are two of the finest people I know. So I'm proud to be able to build a company together with those two guys.
Welcome to the Mastering Property Management Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Sarbit. Join me as we delve into candid conversations with industry experts to uncover their strategies and insights for achieving success in property management. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, let's elevate your property management skills together. Hi everybody, I'm Jared Sarbit and this is Mastering Property Management. Today I have the honor and absolute privilege of having Scott Hutcheson with me. Scott Hutcheson is the Executive Chair of Aspen Properties. I am truly honored to have you on, Scott. So super excited to have you. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Great to meet you and get a little conversation going together today. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. Scott, I want to hear your story. So kind of take me back, through the big milestones along the way. I'd love to hear even where you're from. Tell me your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, my family has always been in the land business. For 5 generations, we've been in real estate or lumber. So the timber business in Ontario 5 generations ago. So I was raised with a family that talked a lot about property or linear feet, in the timber business and what we could get for, a linear foot of timber. And so there were metrics like that I came about with eating breakfast with my father and hearing those terms that, acreage, square footage, yield, return on investment, those sorts of terms were pretty familiar to my brother and I, who is also has been in the commercial real estate business. So we came about this stuff pretty honestly, generationally, which is a pleasure when you actually get to go into the business that you've heard much of your life and find out that it's more than just stuff you heard. You actually like it when you get there. I had a detour early. I worked for Goldman Sachs as a very junior guy, and they work you pretty hard, as Legacy says, on Wall Street. And I knew pretty quickly that I was going to learn more about finance than I could imagine in a very short period of time, but I didn't like it. It wasn't me. It wasn't supposed to be for me. But I was working in New York City and I kept looking up at these office buildings. They're all around me and at the Goldman headquarters, and I kept wondering how those things came about and who owned them and what made sense with an office building to make money or lose money. And so it was while I was in New York City working for Goldman, realizing that wouldn't be my full career, that I applied to go to Columbia University, which my brother had done just before me. My younger brother was ahead of me in school. Yeah. And I went to Columbia for a master's degree in real estate. And I knew the second I arrived in the classroom that is exactly what I wanted to do, and I was in the right place. So I worked in the industry, in the real estate industry for a while, and I realized I was better to work for me than to work for someone else. And my dad was the example in that he had a small business. As he said, he'd prefer run a peanut gallery than work for a big corporation. And he imparted that wisdom on me. So 25 years ago, a financial partner invested and found me, and we co-founded what is now known as Aspen Properties, a numbered company at the time. And that was 25 years ago. We're celebrating that this year. So
I saw
very
that.
excited to be able to look back and say, somehow we put one foot in front of the other, and here we are. We've got a company that people care about.
Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful. And just for the listeners, if those of you who don't know Scott, you got to look him up. First of all, look up Aspen Properties. But you manage and own, am I right, 4.25 million square feet,
Yeah.
and 1.2 billion in assets. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's for debate today with cap rates,
Yeah, yeah, fair
but
enough. Yeah,
at some point we that was the number. I think cap rates today crushed that a little bit, and liquidity discounts,
yeah.
but that's it's in the ballpark of that range somewhere.
Yeah, amazing. And,
Yeah,
and, and certainly you have some, and we're going to get into more detail on these, but some real iconic properties as well, including the Calgary Tower,
sure.
AKA, as my son says, the Paw Patrol Tower, every time we're downtown. But certainly an iconic property in Calgary.
Sure.
And some real beautiful, reimagined office buildings, such as the Ampersand and Edison, and others. So really some beautiful properties in your assets, that's for sure. So congratulations on all your success. Uh, so
Thank
tell me,
you.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Tell me a little bit about your, like what are some of the key characteristics that you entail that have got you here? What are your personality traits, or some of the things that really drive you that maybe they're innate and you were born with it, or maybe there are things that you had to work on and improve. But tell me a little bit about how did Scott Hutcheson get here?
Well, it starts with people that you can respect and emulate.
Mm, yeah,
Um, and in my case, it starts with my father. Yeah. So
beautiful.
if you've got good examples around you, my father and mother were and are. My dad's still alive. He's 97. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the world's oldest water skier.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, yeah. So he's 97 today. He was still water skiing at 93.
Amazing.
And so that says something about who the example of my father was. He's still active. He still shoots birds with me and my brother hunts. I think he's still going to ski this winter,
Wow.
snow
Wow.
ski. So it starts there. And Dad really has. He had a small business, a gravel business, a relatively small business in Huntsville, Ontario, Muskoka, and we heard him sitting at the telephone in the olden days when they weren't cordless,
Yeah.
and sitting at the telephone at the kitchen table every night talking about business and talking about over delivering and not over promising. And
Amazing.
those words and what I think my father represented in terms of doing the right thing and not promising more than he could deliver. And he was at the dinner table, at the dining room table or the kitchen table, collecting accounts at night, calling
Yeah.
people up and
Yeah.
asking them if they could pay yet, and just real values for a small town business that stuck with me, doing the right thing,
Yeah. Wow.
integrity, and I remember when my partner Greg and I were talking 23 years ago about going under contract to buy a building.
Yeah.
We agreed that we would never tie up a building, for example. We're going under contract to purchase a building.
Mm.
And when people used the word tie up, it meant maybe we'll go flip it, you know.
Uh-huh.
That's not what you do. And we've never dropped a building after we put it under contract
Hmm.
in our career. And because, as people would say, I'll tie it up and then I might close, I might not. No, we're going under contract to purchase a building.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so values that you would want and I would want
Yeah.
to learn early in life, that are surrounding your reputation, credibility, treating others with respect, and doing what you're supposed to do every day in a business community. And I think Aspen feels that every day with my partner Greg and Rob Blackwell, are my two partners. they're decent humans. They're people you want to spend some time with. They do the right
Yeah.
thing. And
Yes.
I think all three of us have parents that we look to initially to get that value system, and it's part of who we are. It's where it all starts.
I love that. You definitely hit a chord with me, that's for sure, with three children myself. And, there's no pressure, but there is a lot of responsibility as a parent on, what you expose them to, and the ethics and the integrity and work ethic and all those things. And it's not what you say, it's what you do. And, they're watching at all times.
Yeah, they're picking it up regardless of
Yeah.
whether you think you're putting it down.
Yeah. Well, your father must be so proud of you. I could only imagine. Yeah, that's really special.
Well, I think he's proud of the way we conduct business.
I bet.
That's where it starts, right?
And it is really the long-term approach. I mean, there's easy ways, I'm sure, in your industry that you could, like you said, flip it or, make some quick dollars, but that's such a short-term mentality. And it'll get you to a certain degree, but not to the level of, there would be no Aspens or, doing that. That's for sure.
Well, I think you make more money at every stage if people believe in your business practices. And
Yeah.
and I remember when we were buying a lot in the early 2000s, there was this business and the values were going up quickly in Alberta from '03 to 14.
Yeah.
And I remember we were coming in second a lot, and the brokerage community would pick us to buy a building. And they'd pick us because we had this value system that said we're going to close. And sometimes we found things that were misrepresented.
Yeah.
We said it's okay.
Yeah.
We'll look through that, or we'll split the middle with the seller, and we'll close anyway. And you get a reputation to be a good buyer. And even if you're not the highest bidder, if you're a good buyer, you might be second or third.
Yeah.
And in the end, you always make more money in the long run by doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I would hope that our reputation says that we've done the right thing throughout our 25 years together. And I just have to mention, my two partners, Greg Guado and Rob Blackwell, are two of the finest people I know. So I'm proud to be able to build a company together with those two guys.
That's really beautiful in itself. Having partners that you can really uphold in that regard is a rare thing, I think. And so I'm sure that plays a huge role in your success as well. So
yeah, sure does.
It's a beautiful story. Tell me a little bit about, you're a busy guy. You're on different boards and you got lots happening. Tell me a little about your day-to-day and your roles within Aspen from a day-to-day perspective. I imagine, you're still living an entrepreneurial life. I imagine it's different every day, but give me a bit of a picture of what it looks like.
Well, because I got here first at Aspen,
Yeah.
I've been able to be a little more hands-off than my two partners.
Yes.
And for that, I'm incredibly grateful, because we all bring to the table something different. And one of my roles, I've believed in the last decade or more, is to sit on multiple boards, both community boards and build the community, but also business boards, and to bring home the knowledge that you learn from exterior circumstances. And so while I've been a lot more hands off than Greg and Rob, my job is to help build the community, and go out to the community. It's all of our job to help build the community, but I've been afforded the luxury of serving on more boards in the community or with charities, or running the bid for 2026 Olympics, or sitting on a board with Quadreal, one of the best run commercial real estate companies in Canada. And so my view is that every board's different, and every board's going to teach me something different, and the people surrounding those boards will teach me. And my job is to bring that home and bring that to our strategy. And hopefully I can give to those boards as much as I get.
Right.
That's when it really works.
Yes.
And if I'm not giving enough to the board, then they should get rid of me. And if I'm not getting enough out of the board, then it only lasts so long. So,
Yeah.
so my day to day has been less hands on than Greg and Rob,
Mm-hmm.
but hopefully hands on enough that we can talk strategy about what we're doing on a given day.
Yeah.
And then I think I've probably served on something close to 50 boards.
Wow.
And,
No kidding.
and that brings a lot of knowledge with it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
good for
today
you.
I think I'm sitting on 5 or 6, but at one point I was on 9.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So that's too much.
Yeah.
And we learn from that too. We're constantly learning. Sure.
Yeah. Amazing. What are some of the other boards you mentioned?
Sure.
Quadrille, and what are some of the other boards that you're proud of? And
I sit on Quadrille's board today, and that's a great honor. It's a $70 billion organization in global real estate, and I've been asked to chair the investment committee. So I'm very honored to be involved in that level of business, and it's very different to be thinking about how you place capital globally in what asset classes, and so honored to sit on Quadrille's board. It's owned by it manages capital for BCI, and I sit on the Podium's board, which is a board that recommends to Sport Canada and the Canadian Olympic Committee where financial capital should go to Olympians. And I've sat on that board for many years, and it gives back. I skied for Canada, so it gives back to sport, where I believe I owe a great deal of indebtedness to the sport community for helping create my character.
Amazing. I did not know that. In all my research, I didn't find that one. You were in the Olympics?
No, I skied for Canada for 5 years, and on the Canadian ski team, but I didn't ski in the Olympic Games.
Okay. Amazing. Very cool.
And but those are valuable years of investment. In my whole childhood, that's what I dreamed to do, and I got to ski for my country for 5 years. So those are big days of personal growth, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I sit on the Podium's board. I sit on a private board with an Edmonton Edmonton-based home builder that's now quite national, by the name of Rohit.
Yes.
Land development company. They do homes as well, but they primarily land develop and go vertical from there. Yeah. And it's a private company, really successful private company out of Edmonton, and I'm having a lot of fun with that family. It's privately owned and by a family.
Father and son, right? Father and son, and wife too, I think. And
it. You know it.
I was just actually recommended to look them up the other day, so I was doing a little deep dive on them.
Oh, it's a lovely story with amazing people. And
it looks like it.
They asked me to help serve on their board about a year and a half ago, and I learned from them as much as they learned from me. So it's symbiotic. It's a really fun thing to do.
Amazing. Great.
Yeah, I chaired Arts Commons for a bunch of years, and I'm past chair, and I sit on the Arts Commons board. And that's a community building exercise that I feel a privilege to have been involved in, and we got a big project on the table. While I was chair, we got $230 million investment in a new Arts Commons facility, and I was able to work with the various constituents and bring an amazing CEO to Canada from New York City. So that's been a board I've really enjoyed serving as well.
Incredible.
Clearly Aspen Properties as well. So those are my primary boards. I sit on a few committees as well.
Okay, so you're not busy at all.
Yeah,
so nothing going.
But it's good stuff. It brings you to strategy, and strategy is what it's all about.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. Tell me, let's go into a little bit about Aspen and the properties. Tell me a little bit about what sets Aspen Properties apart, in terms of its approach to both the properties themselves and property management, because this is a property management podcast. Can you highlight some of the core principles and philosophies that guides Aspen in managing properties effectively? You've already, referred to some, based on, your father and how you were raised. Tell me a little bit more about all of that.
Well, let's start with respect. We interview a lot before we hire, and I get to interview a lot of our employees before they're hired, and it takes sometimes 10 interviews to get hired at Aspen, which is a crazy long process, but it's really valuable because the candidate learns about us as much as we learn about them, and they're encouraged to make sure that it feels right. And if 10 interviews is rude, then it doesn't feel right. And
Totally.
and so, there are people that have come here with less, but we get a lot of interviews, and my partners and I try and interview every new employee.
Wow.
And every time I think of an interview, the one consistent words I always say to everyone is, I'm no more important than the receptionist. I have an important job, but I'm not more important. And in respect, I want you to treat me with the same amount of respect as somebody with a less important job, whether it's a receptionist or a brand new property manager, assistant property manager in our business. I want to be treated with exactly the same amount of respect as that person, no more, no less.
Yeah.
And so if our business principles start with respect for each other, you can create a flatter organization that way. So I don't want people afraid of me. I don't want people afraid of my job or my power, my supposed power. I want to be treated with exactly the same amount of respect as all the rest of my team. And if you start with that as a principle, communication gets easier. Nobody's threatened by anything. We're all to be respected an equal amount. And when you can do that, and I hope we do it well, sometimes we obviously aren't perfect, and we're far from perfect, but we're striving towards respect in the workplace as a first value. And we've done that for 22 years, 23, 24 years. Since Greg and I have been partners, that's been a theme we've always spoken to.
Yeah.
And then service is key. We're in a business where we're not as, our number one job is making our tenants happy. And if we can't do that, they won't renew and we won't make any money. And we'll have a bad reputation, and none of that you want.
Yeah.
So you gotta think from a service orientation. But I think the biggest differentiator with us and others came about, let's say when Aspen was young, your inexperience just has you holding on. You're in the grip. You're just trying to figure stuff out in the early days of Aspen. You're working off certain principles, but you don't really know much yet. And every year you're in business, you learn more and more. Yeah. And I think I'm wiser today than I was 25 years ago because I've seen more and I've learned more. I've made more mistakes, and that's the way it works. Yes. But what happened for us was that I think we were following the industry in the early days because we looked at what some of the other more mature businesses were doing, like in Oxford. Yes. And in 2016, we lost a big pitch to a tenant. And it changed everything. We got mad. And we went to Silicon Valley to say what's happening in Silicon Valley and what's cool. And we toured Apple buildings and looked at the new Apple building that was under construction. And we toured Google, and we asked some people to tour us around the coolest buildings in Silicon Valley. And we were under construction at the Edison. And the Edison was going to be, like, our drawings were pretty much corporate. And all of a sudden we said to PCL, hold on. They were doing a reposition with us on the Edison. It was the old Encana building at the time. Yes. And so we hold on, and we pivoted. And poor PCL, they worked with us to do that. But whatever we said before, we changed. And we had the help of some inspirational friends that said, okay, this is what's being done in the cool part of the world called Silicon Valley. So that's how we pivoted on the Edison partway through the construction process and decided everything that's corporate, we're never doing again. Never's a big
Wow.
word. But we're not going to do corporate anymore.
Yeah.
We have to do anti-corporate.
Mm.
How do we get playful?
Mm.
Everything about what that building should represent is more playful than corporate.
Wow.
And I don't care whether you're my age or your age or somebody younger than you, we all want anti-corporate today. You and I were wearing a
Yeah.
tie a few years ago.
That's right.
And
That's
now we
right.
aren't. And
Yeah.
so it all changed in 16. So that's 8 years ago.
Wow.
And 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 it, and businesses want something anti-corporate today. They don't want big granite buildings with 4-story high lobbies that feel like they used to.
Yeah.
They want amenity rich.
Mm.
They want technology that works in your building. They want
Wow.
cool. We got food trucks in the ampersand. They're cool. We don't want a steakhouse in the base of the building. Well, we might want a steakhouse, but we want it to be a cool steakhouse.
Yeah.
Not an old fashioned looking steakhouse.
Yeah.
So everything changed when we lost this tenant pitch.
Mm.
And I think it was the influx of a time when we were mature enough to now grow our own identity and brand,
Yes.
and angry enough that we didn't get a big tenant,
Yeah.
and smart enough to say let's figure out a way to change everything. And that the culture changed that day.
No kidding.
Yeah, we can all talk about the culture changing on that day with that loss of a pitch for a big tenant that's in
Wow.
the market and did well, I guess, in the building they're in, and but they disappointed us so much we had to change everything, and we did that. So
Wow.
so the
Yeah.
Edison, I don't think anybody's copied the Edison properly yet.
Mm.
But we keep hearing people say they will, and then we took the
Yeah.
Edison and we went even crazier at the ampersand in our
Yeah.
next repositioning. And
Yes.
it's, to many, it might be the coolest building in the country. I'm sure there are cooler buildings, but
Yeah.
to many, they might put it right up there.
I think I think you can make that argument. And for those of you that are listening that are in Calgary or visiting Calgary, definitely go visit the Ampersand building. It is such a treat. Just the most beautiful architecture. Make sure you go get a coffee at Little E coffee shop, and you'll see the basketball court right from the while you're drinking your coffee below. It is a really neat place, and you're a visionary for what you did, and to be able to model what they're doing in Silicon Valley and bring that here is it's a risk. I imagine, like, was there any part of you that felt that, are we crazy? Like, are we about to spend a lot of money on something or did you just know right from the onset that this is absolutely going to work and this is what we have to do?
If you lose enough, you figure out how to win.
Yeah.
And so we just lost one too many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you rewrite the script and you never know for sure anything, right?
Yeah.
You just can't predict the future, but you have to be authentic and real and understand values, and you have to keep searching for a better, more creative answer tomorrow. And when you do, and you know your business really well, you sometimes get an opportunity to lead.
Yeah.
And hopefully you lead in the right direction, and it looks like we have. But now what next? What can we do that's better in the next 5 to 10 years that's more exciting? But what we know is we have to pay people for their commute.
Yeah.
They can't come to the office and have it less cool than their house.
Mm-hmm.
And a corporate office is probably no cooler than somebody's house.
Right.
And if you put at the Edison 55,000 square feet of amenities in, golf simulators, basketball courts, great fitness, really good food, fun food trucks, a beautiful charitable cause that we work with Little E on that really changes some of the social, which I'd love to go into in a little bit.
Yes,
But
please.
if you do those things and you make the lobby different and interesting and activated, then people have a reason to come to the office. And we have to pay them for their commute. That's what we say. And then once they're here, we have to service our business more like a hotel and that kind of a business than the olden days where you stuck a concierge in the front and you didn't
Right.
really have a business that was operating.
Yeah.
We operate our conference center. We operate a tenant lounge that's just gorgeous, and
Yeah.
we didn't do that in the olden days. It was not the same menu. So now we think we have to be in the hospitality business more than we ever have been, and that means that office business has to change, and we have to service in a hospitality way, and we have to operate more than just office space. And it's got to be cool, activated, amenity rich, anti-corporate, interesting, colorful, and that's how you pay people for their commute.
Yeah, it's amazing. Truthfully, I was assuming that this was, more conceptualized through COVID, but you were ahead of your game. I mean, you couldn't have been more prepared for COVID as an office building than any other property. I imagine that boded quite well for you.
Yeah, today we believe we had to steal market share.
Yeah.
So when 2014 hit, it became evident to us that there was going to be a lot more vacancy than we hoped for, and there was a lot of overbuilding. And that combination of the two things. So how do you get there? How do you fill your buildings when you know vacancy where it's going?
Yeah.
You got to steal market share. How do you steal market share? Got to be different.
Totally.
So yeah, our pivot came 4 years before COVID.
Yeah.
And so it worked. But we weren't that smart. We were just ahead of it.
Yeah. Well, you're not giving yourself enough credit, but awesome. So, given the record-setting year for net migration into Alberta in 2023, I believe there was just over 184,000 people who came to Alberta. How do you anticipate this influx of new residents will impact the demand for office space in the province and just downtown, Calgary and Edmonton in general?
Well, let's start with how exciting that is.
Yeah, totally.
We live in a place right now that's cool again.
Yeah.
And we weren't cool for some years.
Yeah.
But we're now the place to be for net migration on a percentage basis across Canada. Yeah. And we're projected to be the highest economic growth in the country. Mm-hmm. And so if we can start from that premise, how do you get there? Well, you get there with good governance. Mm-hmm. And you get there by going through the low that we went through as well, because the cost of housing is really competitive. Yes. So we're very fortunate. I think the values of our province, the entrepreneurial spirit of our province, the conservative approach to let businesses be businesses and try and stay out of their way.
Totally.
That good governance makes a business environment so attractive with low corporate rates. The other board I sit on that I didn't mention earlier, or another board that I didn't mention, is I chair Invest Alberta. And Invest Alberta is the economic development arm for our province. So I feel really privileged to help serve the province in pitching for deals with whether it's Amazon Web Services, which we played a role in, so did CED. We partner with CED on many of these things, so it's never one entity. But the province winning business with bringing emphasis and Amazon Web Services and de Havilland aircrafts and air products in Edmonton, and being able to pitch for those businesses, which I don't do that often, but I'm the chair, so I certainly assist in the strategy. Yeah. It's really exciting to see that we have a competitive advantage for housing, taxes, corporate taxes, environment to succeed with an entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. And our province is headed into the right place. So I just need to remind myself how we get there, but where we go with this growth is really exciting. I don't think we're going to see a huge pickup in absorption. We're going to see a bit. We're going to see a bit. Some CEOs are going to downsize. Some of the new growth that's coming to the province will, by its nature, increase the footprint of our office space. Yes. But what's really interesting is I give our current mayor and City Hall a lot of credit for this program with a $75 incentive to encourage obsolete office buildings to turn res.
Yes.
And that not only stabilized the mindset of the business community, it created a city that was ahead of everyone else in North America on addressing vacancy in the office business before COVID.
Yeah. So smart. And you have a property that you're doing that right now, am I correct?
Yes, we have a 400,000 square foot building called One Palliser Square right beside the Calgary Tower, and we're converting that. And what that'll do is we're going to take 2 million square feet out of the vacancy over time, and the goal is to get to 6 or 8. And those are big numbers, and I think the city will succeed at it. So it's one step at a time, but as we succeed, you reduce the denominator, you get rid of old antiquated office buildings, you decrease the vacancy by the nature of decreasing the denominator, and we turn old buildings into viable life, 24 hours activity, residential interaction in a downtown and great vibrancy. So this is really exciting. So what do I see? I see this migration is exciting. I see our vacancy going down by the nature of increasing vibrancy with residential. Our tax base then goes up. And it all works in the right direction. And where we live, it is really premised on where we're going. So when you can see the hope and the excitement of where we're going, it creates more excitement today and anticipation.
Amazing. And I was going to ask you too, with downtown vacancy rates, am I right? They're around 27% in Calgary and about 24% in Edmonton is what I saw from, I think it was an Avison Young report, I believe. Like how do you envision that, over in 2024? Do you see it continuing to go down? I saw a report from Barclay Street that they took a different approach in looking at the space that's actually available and versus leasable, and it was about 21%,
right?
Which I like that perspective too. But how do you see things going over 2024?
Well, good on Barclay Street to be forward thinking in how we look at the market. If space is committed. So my space is leased to somebody, even though they aren't occupying it. It's not available because it's under contract.
Totally.
And so they looked at it the right way, which is what space is available, not what space is unoccupied.
Really smart.
Yeah, it was very David Wallach at Barclay Street is a very, very clever guy, and they looked at this thing a different way after the market didn't look at it this way forever. So. I like that approach, because it's more realistic about where we are today, what's committed. There's a 1 million square foot lease that right now is being committed to with CNRL, for example, which will take up a chunk of vacancy. There will be positive absorption this year. There will be a more res that gets converted from office. So I think you can see, probably 1.5 million square foot swing in the next year, which is a meaningful number on 40 million square feet.
Sure.
And that positive momentum will continue the next 2-3 years for sure, in my view.
Good news. Good news. Okay, very good.
It's exciting.
Definitely. Are there any specific technological advancements, or tools that you believe is transforming the office market? Anything that stands out that you've seen that's really changing?
Well, I can't point to one specific AI or one specific software package that I think answers most of the things that we're looking for. So much of the software was really about addressing other industries and got asked to look at our industry and try and do something for our industry. Right now, there's better software being built for our industry because of our industry. And some of that's the AI measuring, output or input, demand and supply of energy and doing those sorts of things. We're just on the tip of it. We really are. We've written some software that's giving us a lot more data than we ever had before, and it allows us. We call it carrot. It allows us to go to our tenant directly and give them direct communication through our software, so that, and vice versa. So if you're my tenant and the roll of toilet paper is out in the bathroom, you can take a picture of that and send it to us without any explanation. We know where the picture was taken. We know what the problem is. And my tenant now doesn't have to go to their property administrator within the law firm that they work for. And then that person has to convey a message that might get telephone mumbled to my person, my assistant property manager. So there's some stuff that's business to consumer that I really like that we're working on, and we've created a good software package, but also geofencing. So when somebody comes close to the right monitors, the monitors are talking to the property manager that says, you know what, that bathroom door has been used 62 times today, and now we know that that bathroom's really dirty. You got to go clean it. And some of the communication, but the AI will advance us even more. We're getting smarter and smarter. There's a lot of false starts though, and big data is not easy to figure out.
Exactly. And which one is the right one is because there's so many products out there and really hard to navigate. And I'm sure eventually certain ones will rise to the top. But that's really interesting. We were we worked with Carrot and really impressed with just the way it tracked the metrics. How quick we respond, and it holds everyone accountable. And it gives you real data on quality of service and all of that. So very, very cool.
Well, we think that's the way the business goes, and I think that either the big guys are going to do more acquisitions in the right way, or they'll get completely displaced, and it'll be interesting.
Agreed. Awesome. So Aspen Properties, as you've touched on, has shown a commitment to sustainability, and from an environmental and social governance perspective, how does a company incorporate environmental responsibility, into its property management practices?
So my friend Morley Barr, who works with Aspen, and he's in charge of that area of the world, and I don't know anybody that isn't an environmentalist. Nobody. I just don't know anybody that isn't conscious and wanting to do better by the environment. They might not have a perfect strategy or know how to do it. But we Canadians are very good at understanding that that's a responsibility that lies on each of our own shoulders.
Totally.
Morley does it better than I do. And that's why he gets passionate about it. And our first thesis is no greenwashing. So don't pretend to do something that actually isn't right. Don't adopt a policy that's very expensive and sounds good but doesn't do something.
I love it.
So we can't afford to do that. Maybe somebody else can, as somebody way bigger than us. But we can't afford to do it because and we don't want to do that. So we adopted the GRESB formula a bunch of years ago. I think this would be 3 or 4 years now. And we are constantly monitoring the things that we can do better. And every year our score goes up a little bit. So these are the, real metrics, real data, real universal tools to find your KPIs. Those are important to us. And then there are things within that we're going to say to ourselves, that's nonsense. It's actually not really going to help the environment. We're just spending money to look good, and we can't do that.
I love that. We have a very similar philosophy, and it's not, the ESG is not something that's imposed on us. We won't allow it to be imposed on us as a business, but it's naturally who we are. Like we're naturally, going to do whatever we can to take care of the environment. We're naturally going to hire diverse, people because we want the best people available, and there's a lot of diverse people in the community. We're naturally going to give back to the community, and I think that from an Aspen perspective, you see it naturally in who you are as well. A good example of that is Little E.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you
I
for
would love,
thank you
yeah,
for bringing that back around. So,
yeah,
a lot of people use the word ESG and they really mean environment.
right.
But ESG
Yeah.
is environment, social, and governance.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and I wish they'd stop using that word when they mean environment instead of all of the things.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the S in ESG is something that's really exciting to us. My partner Greg and a friend of his they played a lot of hockey together, and they sat down one day and they decided that we should partner with each other, and we at Aspen could provide a coffee shop for raise some money in the industry and provide a physical asset that Little E stands for Emma, and Emma's a handicapped child and with Down syndrome, and her father came about this idea with Greg that we need to train people that have disabilities of various natures and find a safe place to have them trained properly so that they can get their first job. And once they've got their first job, they can get a second job.
Yeah.
And so we were able to partner with Little E as a cafe, and when you do S right, it creates culture. And
Totally.
Aspen is so behind. Our employees have so much pride in what we're doing with Little E, and there are people that travel from all over the province because they've heard of Little E, and their family can relate, and they come and meet our employees, Little E's employees, not Aspen's employees, Little E's employees, to learn from them and learn from the model, and now there's one. As a result of that, that's in Toronto today at St. Clair, and so these things, if you again, you said it best because the way you practice your business. If you do the right things in the long run, it's actually more successful and more profitable, and that beautiful piece of our S creates a culture within Aspen that says we care and we want to do the right thing and invest in all forms of community, including the disabilities.
It's beautiful. If anyone, I already said it, to go get a coffee there, but if anyone just wants to bring a little joy in their life, go to Little E, because it really is just a joyful experience, and it's there are some very sweet people working there, that's for sure.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, for sure. There's kind of been a shift in trends. Like Alberta's been known for the oil and gas industry for ever, as long as I've been here. That's for sure. Which isn't that long, but 22 years. Now there's kind of a disruption, and there's more clean energy technologies coming in. More of the tech sector. How is that? Investment kind of changed the landscape from an office's perspective, from a tenant's perspective, and how do you now consider approaching and bringing these tenants in and managing them? Does it change anything, or what does that world look like?
Well, first of all, I'm not at the forefront of the energy business, so I will make assumptions that are right and wrong, and the biggest assumption that I think my energy friends will say is that the transition is not going to be away from hydrocarbons. It's going to be away from how hydrocarbons get consumed. So it'll be carbon tech that changes the transition so that we can protect the environment better. It's not, can we get off carbon? Yes. Can we get off oil and gas? Can we get away from that as a resource? No, we can't go to renewable energy and depend upon that for decades and decades away. I don't know how far. But a long, long time from now. So how do we transition? We transition by carbon tech. And that assures a future of Alberta in a way that people miss. And that to me is the excitement for the next decade. How we use hydrogen, how we use carbon in new ways, how we capture carbon so that that carbon tech becomes more friendly to the environment. And so when I think of the transition, I just think of the opportunities our province has as the carbon capital of North America. And how we're going to use it in the future will just be more friendly to the environment. And we got all sorts of great people working on that right here in our backyard. And that gets pretty exciting to me.
That's super smart perspective. There's a reason that, like Calgary's known as, the capital of oil and gas, in Canada, but we're also known as the cleanest city and one of the cleanest cities in the world. Mm-hmm. Right. And so there is that beautiful space where you can, make money, foster the industry, and then give back and reinvest it in ways that can support it in a very healthy way.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Yeah, and we got the best engineers in the world that are making improvements every single day right in our backyard. That's our future. Energy's still our future in my mind. Yeah. It's just going to evolve.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. As a leader, in the industry, in the real estate industry, for sure, arguably in Canada, what advice would you give aspiring property managers or just anyone in real estate, looking to climb the ranks to hope to achieve similar results to you, that dream to? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think it starts through who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
There's some metrics around you are basically, 10% this way or that way by the friend group you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
So surround yourself with elevator people. And by that, I mean people that are positive and upbeat and look to the future and with the glass half full. Surround yourself with people of integrity, people that are going to do what they say they're going to do. They don't lie, cheat, and steal, and they don't cut corners, and they don't say things they don't mean. And then find yourself really good mentors. So, as a young person, try and reach out and find out if there's a mentor out there that you really respect. I mentioned an early career at Goldman Sachs, and the best thing about Goldman was that there were 400 people in global finance, corporate finance, that I got exposed to in the early part of my career. And I didn't find one perfect mentor, but I found from a lot of big professionals, smart professionals, things that I thought were really valuable to collect, to try and hold on to try and emulate. And so surround yourself with good people, but find mentorship in those people that are ahead of you in your career. And there's nobody's perfect, but you can find little slices of Jared or Scott or Morley or my partners, Greg and Rob. There's things there that you can say, I can hold on to that and own that too, because that matches my values and my personality and my authenticity.
Yes.
And so that's the starting place, because everything starts with a value system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you start adjusting your value system to that matches you, and you start collecting the pieces that you can build on to build your career, that's where it all begins, in my view.
That's powerful stuff. Thank you for that. It's really, really good. All right, for a couple fun questions. If you could own any famous property in the world, which property would that be?
The most undervalued asset I can find.
Nice. I love it.
So I don't know what that is yet, but you show me the building, and if it's undervalued, that's what we want. If it's famous and overvalued, we don't want it.
You don't want it.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
That's a great answer. So there's no property that you see be like, oh, that'd be that, like, from take away the investment component of it. Just, I would love to have that in my portfolio.
Right now, it's residential.
Oh yeah.
Do you know why? Because there's intrinsic value in creating that new product for our country.
Yeah, big time.
Like we're going to pivot. We're going to take an office building and turn it into res, And we're talking about how do we learn the residential business so we can help solve the problems that our country has right now in accommodating more residents. So,
No kidding.
so my answer to that would be forget the investment for a moment.
Yeah.
The intrinsic value of doing good for our community and building some res
Yeah.
is really interesting to me and my partners.
No kidding. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see that come into fruition. Is there anything that we can expect in 2024 or nothing you can speak of soon?
Well, we're going to make a whole bunch of mistakes converting one Palliser Square into
Yeah,
a
right.
res.
Yeah, learn that.
And until we learn all the stupid things that we did, doing something brand new that not very many people know how to do, especially locally, then I'll give you a list of all the stupid things we did and what we learned from it, and then we can start doing more. There's 1 million square feet of density on the Calgary Tower block, for example, that we should build.
Wow.
So once we take the Palliser Square on that block and make the errors I'm talking about and learn from that, then we should go build 3 towers on that block. And I love that thought because it's new and it's exciting and it's intrinsic to us, and we can solve some problems and create an opportunity to make Calgary better.
That's super exciting. I can't wait to watch because there's people that dream and there's people that do, and you're both. So that's exciting to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we'll try.
and then no, you're doing it. I'm sure you have high standards for yourself. That's the only way to achieve the results that you have. So, and then my last question, if you could recommend any book to aspiring property managers, those in the real estate world, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a property management or real estate book, but what book would that be?
There's habits and how to develop effective ways to deal with habits, and there's lots of books along that line that are famous, and chicken noodle soup kind of books, and In Search of Excellence was a good book by Peters and Waterman, and I don't believe that you're going to learn from a book how to do property management unless you have the right values. So start with value-based books that are interesting to your future, and think about how you become the person you want to be through a set of tight values. Yeah. Because whatever book that is, it's about self-improvement. It's not about property management, because it doesn't start there. It starts with figuring out how to have good habits, surround yourself with good people, good values, and relying on those to take you to tomorrow. And so my favorite books are self-help. Right. And continuously challenge yourself to do better as a person. And so they're not technically based, they're value based.
I love it. That's I just respect so much how the theme of this podcast has been values, and to see a leader at your position talk about that so much, because you don't need to care about that so much at this point. You don't have to be that way, but it's genuine. It's who you are. It's how you were raised, and really, really, really beautiful to see. So it's really inspiring. Like you said, I'm learning from it, and hopefully, I assure you, just this conversation has rubbed off on me and how I will continue to carry my business. So thank you for that.
Well, you carry yourself in the right way, and you do care about these things, and that's why you're doing this podcast. Is you want to learn, and you want to bring those learnings to the community, and that's a value that's really important to our community. So you're doing it, sir. Thank you for your help.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for your lessons that you bring.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's a real pleasure having you on.
Ditto. Thank you, sir. Awesome.
Thank you.